The Runaway Boy and Millionaire's Heart. Victor was known far and wide as one of the wealthiest young men in the country. He was a brilliant entrepreneur, building a vast fortune at an age when most were still figuring out their careers. But despite his immense success, Victor had a reputation for being cold and self-centered. His life revolved around his wealth, expensive cars, luxurious vacations, and designer suits. To Victor, money was everything, and the people around him were merely tools to help him make more of it. One cold autumn evening, Victor arrived in the heart of the city, where he was scheduled to attend a high-profile gala at one of the most prestigious hotels. The night was perfect, the skyline was lit with glittering lights, and the city seemed to hum with an energy that suited Victor's opulence. Wearing a custom-tailored suit, he strode confidently toward the grand entrance of the hotel, unaware that tonight would change his life forever. As Victor approached the doors, a small figure brushed past him, bumping into his side. He barely noticed the boy, dismissing him as another street urchin lost in the city. But then, instinctively, Victor reached into his pocket, and his heart froze. His wallet, a sleek leather accessory containing more money than most people earned in a month, was gone. Anger and panic surged through him as he looked around, his eyes darting through the crowd. In the distance, he caught a glimpse of the boy, now sprinting down the street, clutching something in his hand. Victor's expensive shoes pounded against the pavement as he gave chase, his mind racing. He couldn't afford to lose the wallet, not because of the money, but because it held his credit cards, IDs, and other personal items he valued above all. The boy was quick, weaving through the narrow streets and darting into shadowy alleys. But Victor, driven by fury and adrenaline, didn't stop. As they ventured farther from the busy city center, the streets grew darker and more desolate. Finally, in a dimly lit alley, Victor cornered the boy, who was panting and out of breath, clutching the wallet tightly to his chest. Victor, breathing heavily, snatched the wallet from the boy's hands. "What were you thinking?" he shouted, his voice filled with frustration. "Do you know who I am? You could have ruined my entire night." The boy flinched at the harsh words, but said nothing. He simply stood there, trembling, his eyes wide with fear. That's when Victor took a moment to really look at him. The boy was thin, painfully so. His clothes were ragged and dirty, far too light for the biting cold of the evening. His cheeks were sunken, his hair matted, and his shoes were so worn they barely held together. Victor, clutching his wallet, felt a strange sensation creeping over him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Compassion. The boy was just a child, probably no more than 10 years old, and from the looks of him, he was clearly struggling just to survive. Victor's heart, so often hardened by years of wealth and isolation, softened for the first time in a long time. The boy, still trembling, glanced nervously at the ground. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I didn't know what else to do." Victor, taken aback by the boy's honesty, hesitated. He could have walked away. He had his wallet back. He could have left the boy in the cold alley and gone back to his life of luxury, but something about the boy's frail figure and sorrowful eyes made him stop. "What's your name?" Victor asked, his tone softer now. The boy looked up, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "Eddie," he muttered. "And why did you steal from me, Eddie?" Eddie swallowed hard, his eyes darting to the ground again. "I was hungry," he said after a long pause. "My mom's sick, and we don't have any food. I didn't want to, but I didn't know what else to do." Victor felt his chest tighten. He had grown so accustomed to wealth and abundance that the idea of hunger was foreign to him. He had never once experienced the kind of desperation that would drive someone, especially a child, to steal. A sense of guilt crept into his mind. Victor glanced down at the wallet in his hand, filled with more money than Eddie could ever imagine, and suddenly it felt heavy, not because of its value, but because of the realization that it symbolized the vast chasm between his life and Eddie's. In that moment, something deep inside Victor shifted. "Come on," Victor said quietly, gesturing for Eddie to follow him. Eddie hesitated, unsure if he could trust Victor. But seeing no other option, he reluctantly followed. Victor led him out of the alley and down the street to a small bakery that was still open. The warm scent of freshly baked bread filled the air as they stepped inside. Victor ordered a loaf of bread, some pastries, and 2 cups of hot chocolate. As they sat at a small table, Victor handed the food to Eddie, who devoured it hungrily. Victor watched in silence, still trying to process what he was feeling. Here he was, a millionaire, living in a world of unimaginable luxury. While this boy, just a few streets away, was starving. The contrast between their lives was stark, and for the first time, Victor felt ashamed of his wealth. After Eddie had finished eating, Victor leaned forward. "Tell me about your mom," he said. Eddie wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and looked down at his empty plate. "She used to work cleaning houses, but she got sick a few months ago. Now she can't work, and we don't have money for food or medicine. I've been trying to help, but..." His voice trailed off, and he looked away, embarrassed. Victor was silent for a moment, his mind racing. Eddie's story wasn't unique. He knew there were countless others like him, struggling to get by in the city's shadows. But this was the first time Victor had been confronted with it face to face, and it shook him. After a long pause, Victor made a decision. "Eddie, I'm going to help you and your mom," he said firmly. Eddie's eyes widened. "You are?" "Yes. I'll make sure you both have food, a place to stay, and medicine for your mom. But more than that, I'm going to do something to help people like you." Victor pulled out his phone and called his assistant. He instructed her to find a doctor who could visit Eddie's mother immediately and arrange temporary housing for them. Eddie listened in awe as Victor made the arrangements, unable to believe what was happening. But Victor's transformation didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, he began to reevaluate his life. He realized that his obsession with wealth had blinded him to the suffering around him. He had been so focused on accumulating more money that he had forgotten the importance of using it to make a difference. Victor founded a charitable organization dedicated to helping families in need. He used his resources to build shelters, fund education programs, and provide food and medical care to those who couldn't afford it. His foundation grew rapidly, and soon, it was making a real impact in the lives of people all across the city. And as for Eddie and his mother, they moved into a comfortable apartment, and with Victor's help, Eddie's mother received the medical care she needed to recover. Eddie went back to school, and Victor made sure they were never in want again. Through his interactions with Eddie, Victor realized that true wealth wasn't measured by how much money he had, but by how much good he could do with it. His once selfish heart had been transformed, and he dedicated the rest of his life to helping those who were less fortunate than him. Victor had once been a millionaire with nothing but money. Now, he was a man with purpose, a man who understood the true value of kindness and generosity, and so, Victor's story serves as a reminder that no matter how much wealth we accumulate, the greatest fortune lies in the compassion we show to others.